early on defining myself as like a artist, like a science artist, because I really liked making prints that were inspired by bacteria, for example. And I felt like at school, it became very fast from like about year 7 onwards that it was like I was put in a certain set at science and told I wasn't really good enough to like study it further. I was put in what's called, like, I think back then it was called combination science. So it wasn't even like doing things separately because I didn't tick enough boxes in an exam. And it really like, it could have, turned my doors away from any opportunities in the future, but I sort of kept an open mind. And then when I went to university, I would just meet people who would just show it in a really interesting way.
My guest this week is Holly Bazley. Holly has a bachelor's in interactive art from Manchester Metropolitan University and a master's in education from Goldsmiths University. Currently, Holly works as the Work Experience Learning Advisor for the Education Development Trust and is the founder of the educational games company Hybrid Games. Holly, welcome to STEM with Mr. N.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And can we just start with finding out that what you do as the Work Experience Learning Advisor?
Yeah, of course. So I only started with the charity about a month ago, so I'm still in the training process. But basically, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, they have a thing called Get Ahead London, and they've given this charity a bunch of money to try and get students who are potentially at risk of either leaving school or becoming quite disengaged with school into work experience for 5 days. And myself and my team will act as the people who will match these students with employment. We give them like a one-to-one 60-minute session, and they'll get like 5 really hopefully enriching days doing something that they'll actually want to potentially go on to do, either an apprenticeship or later on after A levels, that kind of thing, rather than just a random work experience they don't care for, that they never hear about again. And it can potentially be something that they can put on their CV and potentially even get a job in the future. So yeah, it's a really good scheme.
And are there particular industries being targeted? Like, are there particular STEM industries being targeted, or is it just trying to find the best fit for the people in the program?
Definitely best fit for the program, but we are now working with green industries and like looking at green tech. So that's something that I've not researched. I'm looking forward to like liaising and contacting those companies. So there's definitely that side, construction as well, and things like that. But yeah, there's a huge push for green industries. So that's really exciting.
And it sounds like a great thing that's being done to try and get these people
Yeah.
out there and get that experience in the world of work. But I know that that's just one part of what you do. And the main bit of what we were looking to talk about is the STEM aspect of your other career with what you do with hybrid games. So could you tell everybody who hybrid games are and what you do?
So Hybrid Games is a business that I set up a few years ago because I was passionate about basically communicating science through play. I originally made a board game just based on the fact that I was interested in how you could take, a subject like it was a board game on antibiotics and viruses and turn it into a game that other people can interact with and then talk about basically medicine around through the aspects of play. And I've since taken it into schools, into holiday clubs, all across the UK, different games that I've sort of been making over the last few years to get people to kind of understand science in that way. And it's been super successful. I've had so many like lovely comments and experiences. And yeah, young people are really craving a way to understand science differently, that's not just the traditional kind of textbook stuff that they're given to them at school.
And what age range are the games aimed at?
Done them with any age range from age 4 to age 60. It's really great when we go to festivals and get parents involved as well playing the games, because they can be the ones a bit more reluctant, but it can really like show like a really nice way for everyone to get engaged in science. Especially as when I first started many years ago, I was doing something in a supermarket, and we were dressed up in lab coats, And a guy said to us, well, I'm not a scientist, so don't bother interacting with me. I don't know any of that stuff. And that's when I kind of realized there was a bigger problem of science being perceived as this prestigious thing that, you know, wasn't open to someone like this gentleman and other people. And you know, kids are the ones who get curious, so they'll come over and it will start a sort of larger conversation, which is really nice. But yeah, I also love doing stuff with teenagers because I know that in secondary school, science becomes a lot more about exams than it is about, you know, exploring and having fun.
And you said that you operate throughout the UK. So do people find a way to get the games sent to them, or do you have a team or yourself that goes out and does workshops and delivers the games?
So I recently started selling my games, and I've actually sold some outside of the UK to a person in America, which was really cool. But most of the time we've worked by doing like bespoke workshops. So we've worked with, for example, like Nottingham Council, and we did like lots of holiday clubs to get kids involved in science and sports. That was quite a nice synergy. Then I've gone to different schools for like STEM days, British Science Week, that kind of thing. And I've gone along with other companies who are, you know, doing science activities and are often like do workshops in collaboration with them. So yeah, I've kind of just gone all over the country delivering these workshops, which has been really nice.
So obviously we've been talking about the games there that you design, but there's a lot of talk right now about AI and its involvement in education. So how do you see AI becoming involved in education and perhaps in that game side of things?
Yeah, so I'm really excited for the future of AI. I think it will bring about more project-based learning. So rather than it just being like you need to memorize and write an essay and then give that in, and then the teachers have to do so much marking, AI will be able to design methods, whether it's games or any kind of other method that's more exploratory and maybe more goes on the actual students' creativity and curiosity, coming up with ideas for projects, coming up with a game or an activity that, for example, for a student who might be more severely autistic or more severely with more severe learning differences, coming up with this bespoke activity for them to do that will keep them engaged. And that will just help free up so much time for teachers, especially with the pressures they have when they have 30 students, you know, and not everyone is engaging. And yeah, I'm really excited. And I think there needs to be more talk about how AI can be used to change education away from the traditional essay writing rather than it being like, right, we need to ban it.
That sounds fascinating, and I'm interested to see where AI is going in the future with games as well. So, for anybody who's interested in what they've heard about hybrid games, where can they go to access your games, either to buy them or get you in to do a workshop?
So the best way is either through my LinkedIn, just like messaging me directly, connecting with me, or just through my website, www.hybrid-games.co.uk. And you can sort of scroll through there, you know, you can sort of create an inquiry through that, through the booking form that way. But yeah, to be honest, it's if you prefer someone who just wants to like link up through message or through phone, you can also like ring me. I'm easily accessed either way, whatever method of preference is, really.
That's great, Holly. I will put the links to your LinkedIn and to your website in the description so people can check them out. And here is a short trailer for Hybrid Games.
I think when students get to secondary school, they are expected to stop having fun. But one of the reasons why I create games to engage students in science is because I believe that fun is the best way to learn.
And I suppose designing games covers that interactive part of your education. But why did you decide to make the games for STEM?
That's a good question, actually. I think it started with what you said, you know, I was doing the interactive arts course, which I think no longer exists in Manchester Met. But basically, I very early on remember signing up to a project where it was a bunch of us artists, as we were being defined, and scientists who were doing sort of different research into various different things. And we all got to like interact and talk about inquiries. And I think one of the things we bonded over one night, we went away for like 2 nights to sort of rural Lancashire, was like playing games. And I just became interested in this network of people who were sort of doing science and science communication and interested in board games. And it sort of sparked the interest from there. But I would constantly sign up to events. I go to lectures at Manchester University. Like I went to one that was based on the moon, and they had actual pieces of the moon rock. I'd often go to the Science Industry Museum there, and I was just generally interested in how science can be communicated through interactivity. And yeah, that led to games, but it wasn't something I was studying at all.
That's quite funny because it kind of mirrors a wee bit my journey into STEM, where I was at
Mm.
university and somebody said, "Oh, why don't you sign up for this astrobiology half day?" And after signing up for that, was, "Oh, why don't you sign up for this? And why don't you sign up for
Yeah,
this?" And it's great though that what it shows the young people out there is that saying yes to opportunities, you never know where they're going to lead, but it's good to not close yourself off from
definitely.
different opportunities that might be out there.
Yeah, I remember sort of early on defining myself as like a sci artist, like a science artist, because I really liked making prints that were inspired by bacteria, for example. And I felt like at school, it became very fast from like about year 7 onwards that it was like I was put in a certain set of science and told I wasn't really good enough to like study it further. I was put in what's called like, I think back then it was called combination science. So it wasn't even like doing things separately because I didn't tick enough boxes in an exam. And it really like it could have, turned my doors away from any opportunities in the future, but I sort of kept an open mind. And then when I went to university, I would just meet people who would just show it in a really interesting way, either through games or I don't know if you know Sam Illingworth, who does it science through poetry, but he has a really successful program of getting teachers and other people who are interested to teach science through poetry, which is, just really incredible. And yeah, then I realized, oh, the two are kind of a lot more linked than I realized.
Yeah, there are a lot of connections between science and art. And one of the people I interviewed previously, who's a theoretical physicist, Lawrence Krauss, one of his friends is the actor Alan Alda, and
Mm.
he'd said that science requires great creativity and
Yeah.
acting requires great precision. I think that was an accurate quote of how it was, but certainly he said science requires great creativity. So there are a lot more connections, as you say, than people are made aware of. But it's unfortunate to hear, though, that you were put in a box and told you couldn't go any further, especially when we're trying to encourage more people to get involved in STEM. So, do you think it's important that there are lots of different voices out there in STEM to show people, the diversity of people in STEM and people that look like them?
Definitely, yeah. So there's like, as you see more, there's like a national shortage of science teachers, especially for chemistry, physics, and maths. And I think people are, they're not getting those role models, especially if the teachers themselves might be really good and then leave, and then you just have to bring in covers all the time. But yeah, I'm actually starting a project with a parents association in Greenwich because we want to bring some speakers who, yeah, look like the people in Greenwich who have turned science away, or the young people there are not really interested in it, and present to them someone who might have had either a journey into science that wasn't traditional, or they just will be there to inspire it. Because I'm very concerned with the fact that the government seems to want everyone to go into jobs in coding and all these things, but yeah, they're not actually putting any energy into creating proper provisions or proper places where people can meet a scientist and speak to them about their work, rather than it just being them having to either go to university or research it themselves, bringing it to their ground. So yeah, it's something that I'm really like passionate about.
And that's why it's great that you've been willing to come on and speak about your journey. But also, when we're speaking about people being sort of left behind as careers progress and education progresses, I know you're a big advocate for neurodiversity. Can you just explain what neurodiversity is before we go any further on that track?
Yeah, I would just define it as a basically a different way of thinking from the neurotypical, and it kind of encapsulates a lot of learning differences, things like dyslexia, which is having difficulty reading, writing, and spelling. Things like autism, which is having a different way of communicating with people and a different way of seeing the world, and processing the world most definitely, and ADHD, which is again a different way of like being able to manage your time and process like that. And I think yeah, there's obviously a huge conversation the last few years going on about it. But from when I first started, like marketing my business, I was trying to market it and thinking about how people with neurodiversity are the ones who have, really creative, off the wall thinking, but they're also the ones who often do not so well in exams or are not given the support they need. So they don't always get to the jobs where they could be super creative and create super like amazing scientific discoveries. So I do think there's a little bit of like a disconnect between the two, unfortunately.
And why did you particularly decide to look into the neurodiversity side of things when you were starting your business and become an advocate for it?
Well, around the time I was myself diagnosed with ADHD, about 2 years ago now. So it's kind of in the midst of me also coming to terms with it, which took a long time, internally, because I would also say things like, well, people would put a lot of stuff online, like what ADHD is and what it's like. And I wouldn't always define myself as those boxes. So I'd be like, oh, well, it's not really that, it's not really that bad. But I sort of came to terms with the fact that even if it's not like that bad or seen as something else, I still needed support for it. I still needed to, make sure I was, managing my life and my time and how I did things, in a way to make it work without trying to what they call effectively masking and pretending to basically fit in and be someone you're not in order to sort of go through the standards of communication and the kind of workplace standards as well. So it's kind of just because of my own journey and interest in it, and yeah.
And you're saying that you were only diagnosed a couple of years ago. So
Yes.
do you then, at that point when you were diagnosed, did you then reflect back on like your time in school? And for example, that thing about being told you weren't good at science because you weren't ticking the right boxes in exams. Did you look
Yeah.
back and think that maybe this underlying ADHD that you weren't aware of actually impacted your time in school?
Potentially, yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, so I have dyslexia as well, and I really struggled in primary school more. That tends to be what happens with dyslexia, because obviously there's so much onus on like you've got to read, you've got to write, you've got to spell everything, and that was really difficult. So my mum pushed me more towards art, so I ended up doing art subjects because it was what I was really good at. But yeah, I often did feel like I remember spending a lot of my science lessons doodling because it was the only way I could actually concentrate. And drawing pictures as well, scientific pictures all the time, because I really did enjoy. But I just felt like so much of it would be like you'd listen to the teacher, you'd write stuff down, maybe you'd watch a video, and sometimes, and once in a blue moon, you do an experiment. But it was just so rare. I always felt that there could have been something more going on, really.
And it's great that you're an advocate for neurodiverse people,
Mm.
and making that conscious effort with your games to help address
Yeah.
potential education issues that they've got. And we were also speaking about the importance of role models as well. Have you got any STEM heroes or role models that you've looked up to?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I don't know because I've not always like researched them myself. I mean, I always like Marie Curie because I think like her work on radiation. I've watched a few movies about her, and then her family as well went into the same legacy of curing cancer. And she was the only female scientist to ever first win Nobel Peace. Was it no, not Nobel Peace Prize? No, physicist prize. What was the prize she won?
It was a Nobel Prize for physics, I think it was first,
That's
and then
it.
chemistry, I think was her second one.
Yeah. So I'd probably say her, but I mean, along the way, just through LinkedIn and other people that I've met, I've just met so many amazing people in science who have helped me, which has been really good.
And this is a nice time to bring it round to what I always end as my final question, which is what advice would you give to children, young people out there who are perhaps interested in STEM but not sure what they can do with it or where they can go with it?
I would say, A few things. I think doing their own research into particularly like what inspires them, and then kind of ignoring what you're told at school, which is you can become a doctor, you could become a lab assistant, like properly doing your own research into different careers. I'm working in a career sector now, so there'll be that support out there. But also, like, if you're trying to make sense of it before an exam, for example, like turning things into games has always helped me. I used to do flashcard games, that kind of thing. Exploring it through either music, art, poetry, anything like that, I think really helps. Not only just like cement it in your mind if you're trying to like memorize a bunch of stuff before an exam, but also maybe explore it deeper of what it means to you. They did an experiment on people who were doing chemistry, I think was it undergraduates, who just come and they made them do poetry about their experience of coming to do chemistry. And rather than just giving them a normal student survey where they would just tick a few boxes about how they were feeling on the course, the poetry was so much more rich and so much more explored things like imposter syndrome and how they felt maybe studying chemistry and what interested them, that for the rest of the time this university decided to take to do poetry as their way to kind of assess how the students were feeling about the course. So I think that, yeah, using art to explore it is probably the way I'd recommend.